Opening hook. The first time he saw her, she was drenched in silver light, standing alone beneath the bioluminescent vines of the VLRA garden. The air hummed with alien energy, the scent of spice nectar hanging thick between them. Ethan knew he shouldn't be here. This was her world, her domain. Humans were guests on Velraxis, tolerated at best, but the idea of interspecies relations? Forbidden. And yet, he couldn't look away. Saria Velcora, first blade of the Velraxian matriarchy, warborn and undefeated, turned her gaze on him like a slow-moving storm. Her violet eyes gleamed beneath the garden's glow, unreadable, unshaken. She was 8 feet of carved perfection, her battle-scarred bronze skin an unspoken testament to 1,000 victories. She was more than beautiful, she was dangerous. And she was watching him just as intently. A test. A warning. Or maybe something more. "You are alone." Her voice finally cut through the silence, rich and deep, accented with something that sent heat curling low in Ethan's stomach. It wasn't a question. He swallowed hard, stepping forward. "And so are you." A flicker of amusement crossed her features, brief, almost imperceptible, but there. "You should leave," she murmured. Ethan should. But he wouldn't. Not now. Not after that look. Character and conflict. The moment stretched between them, taut as a drawn bowstring. "You were watching me during the trials." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. Velraxian warriors were trained to read body language, to decipher the subtlest of movements. There was no use in lying. "I was." Saria tilted her head, assessing. "And now?" His throat was dry, his heart a war drum against his ribs. "Still watching." Something flickered in her eyes, something dark, something hungry. She took a step forward, and suddenly Ethan felt small. She wasn't just taller, she was stronger, her presence filling the space like a tidal wave. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to move, to retreat, to remember that he was just a human. Instead, he lifted his chin, refusing to look away. A low chuckle rumbled from her chest. Foolish. But not uninteresting. Her fingers moved then, brushing against his wrist, barely a touch, yet it sent a bolt of heat racing through him. Velraxians weren't a species prone to casual contact. That meant something. "You should not provoke things you do not understand," she warned, her voice a slow, deliberate threat. But Ethan saw it now, the way her breath hitched, the barely there tension in her shoulders. She was fighting something. So was he. Build up. Saria took another step, closing the distance between them until he could feel the warmth radiating off her body. The scent of steel and spice clung to her skin, an intoxicating mix of war and something undeniably feminine. "Velraxian law is clear," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "No human may claim a warrior of the matriarchy." "But you're not matriarchy-bound," Ethan countered. He'd done his research. Saria was an outlier, a warrior too revered to be controlled, too feared to be bound by their rigid customs. Her lips parted slightly, as if caught between amusement and warning. "You know much for an outsider." He dared a step closer. "Not enough." The air between them turned electric, charged with something primal. Ethan could feel it in the way her gaze darkened, the way her chest rose and fell just a little too fast. Saria wanted to deny it. But she couldn't. "You are a reckless man, Ethan Carter," she murmured, voice slipping into something lower, rougher. "Reckless men do not live long here." Ethan smirked. "Then maybe you should protect me." Silence. A heartbeat. Then, before he could react, her hand was at his throat, not a squeeze, not a threat, just the ghost of a touch. A Velraxian gesture of dominance. Of claiming. His pulse pounded against her palm. And still, either of them moved. Ending twist or cliffhanger. "You don't know what you are asking for," she whispered. "Then show me." Something in her expression cracked, a flash of something raw and dangerous. Then, without another word, she released him, stepping back into the shadows. "Go," she ordered. But Ethan knew one thing as he watched her disappear into the night. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Arya shouldn't have come. She had told herself that a dozen times as she stood in the dimly lit chamber, the scent of stone and fire filling her lungs. And yet here she was, waiting. Waiting for him. The moment she turned away from Ethan in the garden, she had known this would not be the end. The way his eyes had burned into her, the way his breath had hitched when her fingers brushed against his skin, it was a mistake to think she could forget it. Humans were weak. Soft. Breakable. But he hadn't looked away. And now, she was the one who could not let go. The heavy doors behind her groaned open. Her pulse did something unfamiliar, something wrong, as she turned to see him step inside. Ethan Carter. A man who should not have had the audacity to tempt her. And yet he had. And she had let him. Character and conflict. Ethan's eyes swept the room before settling on her. "You summoned me," he said, voice smooth, unreadable. Saria clenched her jaw. She had not summoned him. It was not in the nature of a Velraxian warrior to call upon a human. And yet, had she not done exactly that? She folded her arms, her posture stiff. "You should not be here." He smirked, stepping closer, his movements slow, deliberate. "And yet, here I am." Something inside her twisted. He was too calm. Too bold. Most humans shrank before her, their voices shaking when they addressed her. Ethan did neither. It unsettled her. She turned away, fists curling at her sides. "You do not understand what you are doing. I understand more than you think." Saria exhaled sharply, willing the heat in her chest to settle. "The Araxians do not take humans as mates." He was behind her now, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Then why did you touch me?" Saria stilled. The question cut deep, slicing through her defenses like a blade. She hesitated. A warrior did not hesitate. But the truth burned too hot, too close. Why had she touched him? Ethan's voice dropped lower, softer. "If this means nothing, then tell me to leave." Silence stretched between them. She should. She must. But her tongue betrayed her. She said nothing. "Build up." Ethan moved in front of her, forcing her to meet his gaze. His eyes were searching, his expression unreadable. "You don't want me to leave." Saria clenched her jaw. "What I want does not matter." His lips quirked slightly. "You keep saying that. But if it was true, you wouldn't be here." She hated that he was right. Hated that she felt so much. The Araxians did not feel this way. They did not long. She had spent years forging herself into an unbreakable warrior, a blade honed by battle. But Ethan Carter was not a war. He was something worse. He was a choice. One she had no right to make. "You are a fool," she murmured. Ethan chuckled. "I've been called worse." She turned sharply, forcing space between them. "This cannot happen." Ethan didn't argue. He didn't press. He simply watched. "You're afraid." The words struck like a hammer to her chest. She whirled on him, eyes blazing. "I fear nothing." He stepped closer. "Then prove it." Saria's breath hitched as he reached for her, his fingers grazing the inside of her wrist, so subtle, so careful, and yet it sent a bolt of heat racing through her skin. She could have pulled away. She should have pulled away. Instead, she let him touch her. Ending twist or cliffhanger. The chamber's silence was thick, charged with something unspeakable. Ethan exhaled, his voice low. "Tell me this is nothing. Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll walk away." Saria's throat tightened. She could end this now. One word. One lie. And it would be over. But the lie would not come. She stared at him, at the heat in his gaze, at the way his fingers still barely brushed against hers. And she knew. It was already too late. She had already lost. Saria had never felt this before. The weight of a choice she was not ready to make. The burn of a desire she had spent her life suppressing. The Araxians did not crave. They did not need. And yet here she was, her breath uneven, her pulse an erratic drum as Ethan's fingers ghosted over her wrist. One word. One command. And he would leave. But she didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't stop him when his hand traced higher, the warmth of his palm brushing against her bare forearm. She should have pushed him away. Should have reminded him, reminded herself, what they were. Instead, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Ethan stepped closer, his voice a whisper against the charged silence. You feel it too? A statement. Not a question. And she had no answer. Because it was true. Character and conflict. Saria closed her eyes for half a second. A half second too long. Because when she opened them, he was closer. Too close. The heat of him licked against her skin, a stark contrast to the cold logic warring inside her mind. Ethan, she said, but his name was not a warning. It was something softer. Something she shouldn't allow. But his hand was at her waist now, not gripping, not forcing, just there. And her body, traitorous as it was, did not reject it. She exhaled sharply. This is dangerous. He chuckled, his breath warm against her jaw. I've never been afraid of danger. Her throat tightened. I have killed men for touching me without permission. Ethan's fingers flexed ever so slightly. Then tell me to stop. Again silence. Again she failed to lie. Ethan must have seen something in her expression because his voice dropped lower, softer. You don't want me to stop. Saria's muscles coiled, tension warring between instinct and desire. She was not meant for this. She was a warrior. A leader. Not some trembling fool undone by a human's touch. But the way he was looking at her, like she was something worth fighting for. It terrified her. And worse, it thrilled her. Build up. She had no defense when he reached up, his fingers barely brushing the sharp edge of her jaw. No armor to protect her when he leaned in just enough for his breath to ghost over her lips. This is your last chance, he murmured. Saria knew what he meant. One word. One step back. And this moment, this madness, would end. But she was done lying to herself. So instead of retreating, she moved forward. The kiss was not soft. It was not careful. It was a clash, a battle, all fire and heat and unspoken war. His hands gripped her waist, anchoring her as she pulled him against her, bodies meeting in a collision of heat and want. Saria had never done this before. Not like this. Not with someone who made her feel. And for the first time in her life, she didn't care about the rules. Didn't care what it meant. She just wanted. Ending twist or cliffhanger. The moment shattered when the doors slammed open. Saria ripped herself away from Ethan, instincts snapping into place as she turned to face the intruder. A Velraxian stood at the entrance, clad in high-ranking battle armor, expression a mask of cold fury. Saria Velcora. The warrior's voice was a blade of ice. You have broken the oath. Ethan stiffened beside her. What the hell is the oath? Saria's pulse thundered. Because she knew exactly what it was. And she knew exactly what was about to happen. The oath of purity, she said quietly. No Velraxian warrior may take a human as a mate. The warrior took a step forward, hands on his twin daggers. The punishment, he said darkly, is exile. Saria's stomach dropped. Not her exile. Ethan's. If they let him live at all. Saria's heart was a war drum. The warrior stood between them and the only exit, his twin daggers gleaming under the chamber's low-burning torches. His violet eyes, identical to hers, burned with the cold certainty of judgment. Exile. For Ethan. Or worse. The words of the oath still rang in her ears, a doctrine carved into Velraxian law long before she was born. No human could claim a Velraxian warrior. And no warrior who fell could remain within the matriarchy. Her entire life, she had believed in it. Until now. Until him. Until the moment she had tasted what it meant to want something more than duty. And now, she would have to make a choice. Between her people. and the man she could no longer pretend she didn't want. Character and conflict. Ethan took a slow step forward, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. If you think I'm just going to let you throw her life away, you don't know a damn thing about humans. The warrior's eyes flickered to him, barely containing his disdain. And you know nothing of Velraxian law, human. Saria gritted her teeth. Enough. Her voice cut through the air, and both men stilled. She stepped between them, facing the warrior, her brother. Velkai Velkora, commander of the oath-bound guard. His expression didn't soften. It never had. Do not shame yourself further, sister. You are a warrior of Velraxis. His tone darkened. Not some human's possession. Saria's pulse spiked. Possession? Is that what they thought of this? Of him? Ethan let out a sharp breath behind her, but he stayed quiet. Smart man. He knew this wasn't his fight. It was hers. I broke no oath, Saria said, her voice steel. Because I do not belong to the matriarchy anymore. Velkai's expression hardened. You. I choose him. The words tumbled from her lips before she could stop them. And once they were free, she felt lighter. Stronger. Velkai's jaw tightened. You realize what that means? She did. It meant exile. It meant abandoning everything. But as she turned, looking at Ethan, at the defiance in his eyes, at the way he stood beside her as if he belonged, she knew something else. She wasn't losing anything. She was choosing. Build up. Velkai exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You would throw away your entire life. For this? Saria glanced at Ethan. He was watching her, not with expectation, not with arrogance, but with something deeper. Something real. She had faced death on the battlefield more times than she could count. But she had never felt more alive than she had when he touched her. And for once, she wanted to live for herself. I would. Velkai's nostrils flared, and for a moment she thought he might draw his blades. Ethan tensed beside her, ready for a fight he wouldn't win. But then, something changed. Velkai let out a slow breath, his shoulders loosening just enough for Saria to see it, the hesitation. The pain. You are a fool, he murmured. Saria smirked. Runs in the family. Velkai exhaled through his nose, looking between them. Then, finally, he stepped aside. Ethan blinked. Wait, what? Velkai met Saria's gaze. I will not stand in your way. She stared at him, uncertain. Just like that? He hesitated, then spoke softly, so only she could hear. I have spent my life fighting for a cause I never chose. His gaze flickered toward Ethan. At least you had the courage to make a choice. Saria swallowed hard. She had never seen him like this before. Vulnerable. She reached for him, just briefly, clasping his arm in the way warriors did. Velkai squeezed back, then turned to Ethan. If you hurt her, he said, voice deathly calm, I will find you. Ethan smirked. Noted. Velkai let out one final sigh before stepping fully aside. Leave now, before the council learns of this. Saria didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Ethan's wrist. Come on. And together they ran. Ending twist or cliffhanger. The city lights stretched before them as they fled into the Velraxian night, shadows chasing their heels. Saria had no idea where they were going. No idea what came next. But when Ethan laced his fingers through hers, squeezing tight, she realized. She didn't need to know. Because for the first time in her life, she was finally free.